Groom got exposed for cheating at the wedding, so the bride proposed to the low-rank bodyguard. He cheated right before saying, "I do," so she turned, pointed at the black bodyguard, and proposed. She walked down the aisle to marry the man her family called perfect. But 1 minute before the vows, a text message shattered everything. His betrayal wasn't a rumor. It was a photo with a bridesmaid in her own hotel suite. And while the church gasped, she did something no one saw coming. If you find value in real stories told with clarity and truth, subscribe to Stay Tuned at Real Father Stories, where love loss and justice collide. The wedding was perfect, at least on the surface. Glass chandeliers, white roses from Ecuador, a live string quartet playing a custom arrangement of All of Me. Even the bride, Sienna Ray Morgan, looked like she'd stepped out of a luxury bridal magazine. She was 29, head of her own interior design firm, polished, controlled, always composed. And today she was about to marry Caleb Ryland, a 32-year-old tech startup darling with venture capital charm and a diamond-studded Rolex to match. But 30 seconds before the walk down the aisle, Sienna's phone buzzed. A message from her cousin Mia. "You deserve to know before you say, 'I do.'" Check the photo. Her hands trembled. One tap, and there it was. A photo. Her groom, Caleb, shirtless, in their honeymoon suite, kissing one of her bridesmaids, Janelle. Time stopped. Outside the dressing room, the wedding march was starting. "Miss Morgan," a planner's voice called, panicked. "We're ready." Sienna stared at the screen. The betrayal was fresh, wet, bleeding under her skin. But she wiped her tears, stood up, straightened her veil, and walked down the aisle. Everyone rose. Her father waited to escort her. Caleb stood tall at the altar, smiling as if nothing had happened. Sienna took each step like a queen, not broken, reborn. She reached the altar, looked into Caleb's eyes, and said nothing. "Dearly beloved," the officiant began, "we are gathered here." But Sienna raised her hand. "No." Gasps. "Before we continue," she said, "I have a correction." She turned not to her family, not to the audience, but to the man standing still near the church wall in a black suit and earpiece. The moments no one saw 5 years earlier. Sienna Morgan was standing in the back of a luxury car parked outside a charity gala in uptown Manhattan. Her mother had just scolded her in public again for not being polished enough, and Sienna was having a panic attack in the backseat, mascara, running heels, tossed to the floor. The driver didn't say a word. But from the front passenger side, the new hire Marcus Tate, ex-military, now working private security, noticed. He quietly opened the rear door. "Miss Morgan," he said gently, without looking directly at her. "Try breathing in for 4 counts. Hold. Then breathe out." She looked at him like he'd read her mind. "I'm fine," she whispered a lie. He handed her a cold water bottle, said nothing more. But it was the first time anyone had spoken to her like a person, not a possession. Over the years, Marcus was always there. When Sienna fainted from exhaustion at a design expo, he caught her before her body hit the concrete. When her ex tried to corner her at a fashion event, Marcus stepped between them without blinking. When her mother called her too dramatic for seeking therapy, Marcus drove her to every appointment without judgment. He was just the bodyguard, people said, but she saw what others didn't. How he watched everyone but asked for nothing. How he always remembered her almond milk preference. How he never once overstepped, even when she let her guard down around him. And one night, when she was tipsy and heartbroken and slurring apologies into her champagne, she asked him, "Why haven't you ever left? You could make more money elsewhere." He looked at her and didn't smile. Because money can't buy peace. And this job lets me protect the one person I've seen fight for hers. Now back at the wedding, Marcus stood in disbelief at the altar. Sienna was still kneeling, holding out the ring. Her hand didn't shake. The crowd whispered. Caleb cursed. The officiant didn't know whether to call security or a therapist. Marcus finally spoke. You sure? I've never been. The job he turned down. And why? 2 years before the wedding. Caleb Ryland was on a power trip. His company had just closed Series C funding. His ego inflated alongside the valuation. And at one of Sienna's corporate dinners, he pulled Marcus aside. You've got discipline, presence. You ever consider working for someone who can actually pay you what you're worth? Marcus stayed quiet. I've got a place for a man like you, Caleb continued. Head of private ops, 6-figure salary, sign-on bonus. Thanks, Marcus said, but I'm good where I am. Caleb smirked. Come on, she's just an heiress with anxiety and a rescue complex. Marcus didn't respond, but something changed behind his eyes. Later that night, Marcus typed up a resignation letter. He never submitted it. Instead, he showed up to work the next day like he always did. Quiet, early, prepared, because he wasn't loyal to the paycheck. He was loyal to the person, to the woman who never used his background against him, who once asked him what kind of tea he liked and remembered it a year later, who didn't flinch when she saw his combat scars or the old photo of his son who passed away before he turned 5. A week later, Caleb tried again, this time more aggressively. You think she'd even look at you if you weren't being paid to protect her? Marcus didn't blink. With respect, sir, don't confuse being near someone with knowing them. It was the only time Marcus ever raised his voice around Caleb. Sienna never heard about the exchange, but she noticed how after that week Marcus seemed more watchful, like he'd seen something no one had warned her. The whispers, the headlines, and the threat. The next morning, it was everywhere. Heiress dumps, cheating groom proposes to bodyguard mid-ceremony. From hired help to husband, Sienna Morgan. Shocks Upper East Side. Black bodyguard steals the bride, and the internet can't look away. Some called it the boldest act of self-respect they'd ever seen. Others a scandal, a betrayal of class and tradition. But Sienna didn't care. And neither did Marcus. They disappeared for 2 days. No press, no phones. Just a small cabin in the Catskills and the sound of snow tapping the windows like a soft reminder you're free now. But on day 3, when they returned to the city, a letter was waiting at Marcus's apartment. No return address, no name. Inside was a single sentence. We know what you did in Detroit. And a photo, grainy but clear, of Marcus in a back alley from nearly 10 years ago. He froze. Sienna looked at him. Marcus, what is this? He didn't answer. He walked outside, stood in the cold, and stared at the skyline for 20 straight minutes. That night, he finally spoke. In Detroit, before I moved to New York, I was working freelance security for a nonprofit. It went south. A drug bust happened on the same block we were operating out of. I wasn't involved, but a kid he ran to me for help. I told him to stay down. He clenched his jaw. The cops thought I was shielding him. I got cuffed. No charges. But the photo makes it look different. Sienna touched his arm. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want to drag that part of my life into yours. Marcus, she whispered, you are that part of my life now, and no one gets to use your past to threaten our future. The press conference and the power shift. Sienna never liked attention, but today she walked into the press room like she was born to lead it. A row of microphones, reporters itching for scandal, and Caleb watching from the back of the room, arms crossed, smirking, certain she'd fold under pressure. But she didn't. She stood behind the podium and cleared her throat. You've all seen the headlines, the footage, the questions flying around. So let me be clear, I didn't trade down. I woke up. The cameras clicked. The man I was about to marry betrayed me not just personally, but professionally. 3 years ago, Caleb Ryland quietly paid off a journalist to bury a harassment claim from a junior developer. That journalist is now ready to speak. And so am I. Caleb's face paled. Sienna held up the envelope. I have the receipts, the bank transfers, the emails. Then she took a breath and turned to Marcus, who stood quietly by the wall. And to those who want to bring up his past, you're welcome to try. But understand something. Marcus Tate is the most honest, principled man I've ever met. He doesn't hide behind PR teams or NDAs. He doesn't use power to manipulate. And if loving him means I lose every contract in this room, then so be it. A hush fell over the room. Then a slow clap from a senior editor in the back. Then another, until the whole room stood. Not because she was flawless, but because she was finally free and unapologetically so. The lawsuit, the mother, and the choice. Caleb didn't take humiliation quietly. Within 48 hours, he filed a defamation lawsuit against Sienna, claimed she'd slandered his business, accused her of leaking false documents to the media. He demanded $5 million in damages, but worse, he found Marcus's old employer from Detroit, got him blacklisted from a major federal security contract, sent a message loud and clear, "You think you can take my bride and get away clean." Marcus was calm, almost too calm. He didn't yell, didn't throw anything, but one night Sienna woke up and found him gone. He was in the living room, sitting in the dark. "I don't want to be the reason you lose everything you built," he said quietly. She shook her head. "You're not the reason. You're the reason I remembered who I was before I built it all." And then someone unexpected knocked on the door. Her mother, Eloise Morgan, Manhattan socialite, Ice Queen, the last person Sienna thought would come. She walked in without invitation like always, but something had changed in her face. She placed a box on the coffee table. Inside, old newspaper clippings, a photo of Sienna at 7, and a note. "This was from your father," her mother said, "before he passed." Sienna looked confused. "He never said much, but he always told me, one day our daughter will choose a man based on his spine, not his salary. I think today he'd be proud." Eloise turned to Marcus. "You don't owe me anything, but you love her honestly. And that's more than I can say for half the people at my charity galas." Then she added, "Also Caleb's bluffing. The documents are real. My legal team will make sure the lawsuit dies a quiet death." The proposal that stopped traffic, the backlash against Caleb was swift. Former employees began speaking out. News anchors debated ethics versus optics. Social media turned the wedding twist into a movement. "Propose to the right," one trended for days. Tweets like, "Find someone who guards your heart like Marcus guarded her life." Every woman deserves to be protected, not controlled. But amidst the noise, Marcus remained silent. He still showed up early, still walked Sienna's rescue dog, still checked every window lock before bed. And Sienna, she worried, because she had proposed in public, but he hadn't answered with a proposal of his own. Until one Sunday morning, they were walking through Madison Square Park. Sienna wore sweats, no makeup, coffee in hand. Marcus paused near a bench, looked oddly nervous. "What is it?" she asked. "There's something I didn't get to do properly." He pulled something from his coat pocket. Not a diamond, not a ring box, but a compass old scratched and engraved. He handed it to her. When I lost my son, he began voice low, I kept this. It was his. I promised myself I wouldn't give it away until I found a new purpose. You gave me that purpose. He dropped to one knee. You already asked me. Now let me return the honor. Will you let me walk beside you, not as your guard, not as your shield, but as your equal, your family? The real wedding and the letter she left behind. The second wedding didn't have chandeliers. There were no bridesmaids, no 6-tier cake, no press in designer heels. Just a small rooftop in Harlem, a handful of close friends. Her mother, his sister, a rescue dog with a flower collar. Sienna wore a simple white silk dress. Marcus wore a dark gray suit, no tie, just his heart on full display. The officiant read the vows. But it was Sienna who added her own. They said I was impulsive. They said I was reckless. They said I'd regret this. But I've lived with regret. It looks like staying silent. It tastes like pretending. It feels like a lie you keep swallowing until it swallows you back. You didn't just protect my life, Marcus. You helped me build one I want to stay in. They kissed, not with drama, but with certainty. After the guests left, Sienna handed the officiant an envelope. If any young woman ever asks you why I married a man the world called just a bodyguard, give her this. Inside was a handwritten note. Dear girl who almost settled, don't marry the man who looks good in photos. Marry the one who sees you when no one else does. The one who stands silently until the moment you need him to roar. The one who would rather lose the world than lose your trust. Because one day, you'll need more than flowers and promises. You'll need someone who shows up when it's inconvenient. Who says, I've got you, and means it. I almost missed mine. Don't miss yours. Love, Sienna Morgan Tate. The end. Thank you for following the journey of love, truth, and second chances. If you believe in real stories that heal, inspire, and twist expectations, make sure to subscribe to Real Father Stories, where every voice matters and every heart